Good afternoon and welcome to Beholden To Truth. It is your humble host, Joshua, here with you for another amazing happy hour, sitting outside the gym, getting caffeinated, sipping some pre-workouts with the aviators on. What do we think? I've had these things for literally 10 years. And I know I'm not going to wear them the whole episode. That would be absolutely cringe. I really can't stand when people wear sunglasses when they're having a conversation because it avoids eye contact. It's very, very rude. It's the same thing with wearing a baseball hat inside. You know, in the South, men used to be and still somewhat are taught chivalry and etiquette. And one of the things in the etiquette curriculum, I actually have a book called How to Be a Gentleman. I highly recommend it. And the guy who wrote several books. And another one is called As a Gentleman Would Say, which teaches you how to speak like a gentleman. And I read these books when I was in my early 20s, maybe even late teens. And chivalry, etiquette, these are the things that traditional women complain don't exist anymore, and they're right. And I see it all the time. Like, you go to a restaurant, you go to some place inside and the guys are wearing their hats. That triggers me. Like, I really don't like that. Especially when you're having a conversation. Like, it's not supposed to cover your eyes. Same reason you don't wear sunglasses, because it's disrespectful. If you're talking to somebody, eye contact is immediately drawing them in. And if they don't know whether or not you're making eye contact with them, they can't tell how sincere you are. Like, you know, a lot of times people say one of the body languages, the techniques you can use to figure out if somebody's lying is whether or not they're making eye contact. Do you see how that's connected? It's kind of important. When you talk to somebody, you need to make eye contact. Don't be one of these autistic guys who's like trying to talk to a woman or somebody else and you're like looking all around, you know, like Elon Musk style. Like, it's important, okay? The little things matter. Okay, very quick funny story just in terms of chivalry and etiquette that you guys might want to hear. Before I get into what we're going to talk about, I got 3 things on my mind. So get comfortable. I have my pre-workout here. Got ourselves an arm day in the gym. Looking forward to that. Not really, actually. My elbow kind of hurts. And I'm trying to do too many upper body days in 1 week. I have 4 upper body days right now in 1 week. Normally I only have 3, but I added an arm day to try to bring up my triceps. And I think that's just a little bit too much upper body volume. So I need to take some off days between the consecutive days. Anyways, you don't need to know the details of my routine and some of the chinks that I need to work out. But anyway, let me take a swig of this and we'll go down memory lane real quick. I got one of those stories from Portland, Oregon. You're gonna love this. Poor Southern guy moves out to Portland, Oregon, liberal capital, hellhole, Sodom and Gomorrah of the world. Didn't know what I was in for, you know? Poor, naive, young, 27-year-old Josh just went out there thinking, surely these people are just like me. I wasn't even Christian at the time, but at least I had common sense. And I had received some, you know, but actual documented education on what it means to be a man and what it means to be, in particular, a gentleman. Yeah, they don't appreciate that kind of thing out there. My dating life. I should probably do a whole documentary series on my dating life in Portland. Maybe not a documentary series, but just one vlog devoted to the shit show that was my 7 years in Portland, especially the attempts to date and try to find the one out there. Didn't go so well. I found one good woman, and that was the woman who helped me come to Christ. All of the others, no. Absolutely garbage. I'm just thinking through them now, and oh, buddy, I was working with what I had, okay? You listen, it's slim pickings out there, you know? You got to just take what's in front of you. Can't be too discriminatory. I was like, okay, at least they're not fat, you know? Like, that was as low as the standards had to be out there. And so anyways, I'll knock out this one quick anecdote because it's related to the gentleman subject. I went on my very first date in Portland. I landed 2015. Got this date with this girl on one of the dating apps. I don't even know which one. And the date was supposed to be a coffee date. And by the way, coffee dates in Portland are different because all of them are complete narcissists, and they're not going to go to Starbucks. They want to go to the little shitty, beat down, I don't know the right words to describe them, but like the little boutique coffee places, all the hipster joints. So I have to go to like downtown Portland, which is already bad enough. And I show up, she's dressed in all black lipstick. I'm like, okay, this is not what the dating profile showed, but all right, whatever. And have a moderate conversation, nothing particularly memorable, honestly. It was kind of clear though, just based on the outfit and the way she presented herself, that no need for a second date here. And so we're leaving the coffee shop, and I go and hold the front door open for her, as a gentleman should. And she just stops inside the store and will not walk through the door. And so I'm just standing there looking like an idiot, holding the door open. And she goes, "I'm perfectly capable of getting the door myself." One of those. That was my first week in Portland, first date in Portland, first experience of Portland women. And it did not really get any better from then on out. Except that one. But man, I should have known. I should have taken that as an omen. Like, you do a common courtesy. Did you actually think I was unsure if you could open the door? Like you weren't capable? I was like doing a favor for you? No, it's called courtesy, manners. It's called being a man. You do it for elderly people. Honestly, you do it for anybody who's behind you. But in particular, if it's a woman and you're on a date with that woman, yeah, you open the door for her. Hello? Like, this is just how the world works. No, I'm perfectly capable of getting the door. All right. All right. Oh boy. So don't do it to yourself, okay? Do not live in a liberal city, especially if you're single. Like, it's going to be very difficult to find yourself a sane woman if you're living in New York, San Francisco, LA, Portland, Seattle, one of those kind of places. If you're stuck in one of those environments just because you were born there, I said this in a vlog the other day, you need to get the fuck out of there. You need to move. I understand your family's there, but in terms of your future, it's a big thing with your children, your future children. First, it's going to be hard to find a wife there, but second, you don't want your children growing up around that. That's the real motivation for you to get yourself out of there. Find yourself a conservative pocket of the country. I recommend the South because the South actually is still majority Christian. We do still teach young men how to be gentlemen, young women how to be ladies. It actually matters. So anyway, I got a few subjects on my mind this afternoon, prompted by a question I got from a Instagram follower. Let me take a couple swigs of this pre-workout, and I'm gonna tell you guys what that question was. I think it was like 5 words, but it surfaced some important information that it's one of those things where I take it for granted because I've known about it for years, but a lot of people don't. And you need to know this. This is a huge life hack. This is huge in terms of knowing who you can trust and who you can't. This is a game changer. So, all right. You ready for Uncle Josh to red pill you, to give you a secret detective technique to figure out who you can trust and who you can't? Good friend of mine sends me a DM saying, "Hey, what do you think about Peter Schiff, Schiff. Never fucking heard of him, okay? That's my first impression. Never heard of the guy. Now, I do think, well, I know what I think of Adam Schiff in government, but that's clearly a different person. So I don't really have an opinion about somebody I've never heard of. Let me do some quick research and get back to you. So I go and YouTube Adam Schiff real quick, and there he is on an interview with Patrick Bet-David. And he's talking about, actually, first thing, I'm sorry, before I found the Patrick Bet-David interview, as you guys all should, first you Wikipedia the person. Assuming there's somebody of notoriety, there's going to be a Wikipedia about them. Sure enough, there was. And you guys know where I'm going with this. You probably know this life hack, but we're going to get to the more lesser known one. Early life section. Peter Schiff, he's Jewish. All right. Well, hold on. I know how you guys feel about Jews. I know how you guys feel about Jews. You probably know how I feel about Jews. But everybody has a chance. Everybody doesn't fall into the stereotype. Not every Jew. You know, I'm not going to say anything about this guy before I do some research. I don't know what his political opinions are. Maybe he's a Christian convert for all I know. Turns out he's an economist and a very wealthy man, and he's done many spots on Fox News, CNBC, and, you know, those kind of outlets talking about the economy. And apparently back in 2006, 7, 8, he predicted the financial crisis. And so that's really where his clout comes from. He knows a lot about the markets, stocks, real estate, that kind of stuff. And so I say, okay, he's Jewish. He's good with money. But we're not going to stereotype anybody here, okay? Let's do a little bit more research. Drop his name into YouTube. And first thing that comes up, he's in this interview with Patrick Bet-David, who, if you guys know who that is, he covers a lot of politics, but really his platform is more devoted to entrepreneurship, trying to teach people how to get wealthy. I don't remember his ethnic background, but he's not white, clearly. He is a Christian, and he advocates for conservatism. He advocates for Christianity. He's a big Trump supporter. And we're going to come back to this in a couple of points later, because I have things to say about Patrick Bet-David that may not sit well with you guys, may surprise you, but we're going to get to that. So Peter Schiff is sitting here with Patrick Bet-David, and the topic of this little 10-minute interview is the Israel-Hamas conflict. And this is like right after it kicked off. And, you know, first words out of Peter Schiff, the Jewish wealthy individual, are something along the lines of, you know, Israel has to do what they have to do in order to respond to what Hamas did to them. Hamas did to them. And there it is. There it is. That tells you everything you need to know. But I still haven't gotten there yet. There's still some more detective techniques I'm going to share with you. Obviously, you guys may have thought, okay, I should check his Wikipedia. Maybe I should check his YouTube. So, first, he's Jewish. Second, he's in the finance sector. Third, he does an interview with Patrick Bet-David saying that Israel just has to do whatever they have to do. The conflict is a bad thing, and it's really awful, but, you know, listen, they have the right to defend themselves, and Hamas is evil, and I can't believe what Hamas did on October 7th. And so I understand why Israel is doing what they're doing. And this is very shortly after the incident first kicked off. So we got 3 strikes so far. So we're pretty much already done. He's already struck out. We know what he's about. He's a Jew. He cares a lot about money. He cares a lot about Israel. But here's the fourth one and the most important thing, in terms of doing some detective research, because maybe, just maybe, he's more based than that, and emotions were high right after October 7th, and maybe he just bought into the propaganda, the beheaded babies and babies in ovens and mass rapes and all this other nonsense. Did you know that you can search an individual's Twitter history? And if it's an individual who engages with politics a lot, 100% of the time they are on Twitter, because Twitter is the town square for political discourse, always has been. And so there's a feature that is not promoted that a lot of people don't know about that allows you to search a user's post history, everything they've ever posted. And you can search for keywords. And in this case, my suggestion for you guys, whenever you're trying to figure out how does somebody feel about the Jews or Israel or any other subject. Use this feature. I'll put it up in the video. And so I just quickly go to Twitter, go to this little search portal, type in Israel. What do you know? A handful of posts. Well, I am pro-Israel. Maybe somebody should be talking to Kamala Harris about whether or not she's going to do something about these pro-Palestine protests. Gotcha. They out themselves. We have to trust what they say. When they say, here's the things I care about, here are my affiliations to foreign nations, here's my worldview, Jews are always the victim, Hamas and Palestine are evil for what they did, the war they started on October 7th. And what's really illuminating here is that this guy, for 20 years, has been seen as extremely intellectual, basically prophetic. He's sitting there on one of the largest podcasts on the internet with Patrick Bet-David, and everybody's nodding about how smart he is. And then when it comes to the Israel subject, put aside all his market advice, okay? If you want to trust him for advice about buying gold and Bitcoin and figuring out when to buy low and sell high and maximize your 401k, that's great. It's not a secret that Jews are very knowledgeable about money, okay? But when you're trying to figure out, can I actually trust this individual with his political opinions and what he believes the United States government should be doing, not responding to market conditions. I'm talking about policy. Financial policy and foreign policy and domestic policy and social policy. Everybody thinks this guy is so fucking intelligent. And I have this Instagram follower sending me the message asking me what I think about him because he says he has a spot-on analysis of capitalism. And he's really cool and smart because he goes and educates young men on capitalism and how to use it to their advantage and how to secure wealth. And so I think he's actually really, really based. And this isn't, going in on this friend of mine. He's a good guy. And I was teaching him this. This is why it prompted me to do a vlog about it, because people will see somebody as an expert in a certain area and just assume that that makes them a trustworthy individual. But when it comes to the most important issues, which we hammer on virtually every vlog, which are protecting the white majority in America, making sure we have white leaders, and obviously making sure our faith is protected, how do you think the Jewish guy who cares basically solely about the economy and how it can enrich himself and the nation of Israel, how do you think he feels about the idea of making sure America stays a majority white country with white leaders? Do you think maybe that might invoke some thoughts about the Holocaust and the last nation who insisted they should be a white nation? I think so, especially given how he feels about Israel. When I mentioned Patrick Bet-David and that I had more to say about him, it's actually the exact same topic.
Our country is at an inflection point. We can all feel it. And now is not the time to be a physically, mentally, or spiritually weak man. I've spent the last 10 years creating a blueprint for unfucking your life up, and it's a lot more than cleaning your room. How to achieve physical, mental, and spiritual mastery gives you a layman's understanding of how to master dieting and exercise, get the most out of your time, build ironclad mental fortitude, and leverage your faith to become a role model among men, something we desperately need right now in this time of war. I break down how to create a sustainable, flexible diet from scratch, how to organize your fitness routine, supplementation, and I dispel many myths and provide many red pills on dieting and exercise. The book is on sale right now at BeholdenToTruth.com for 20% off. Or you can get a free copy if you're a founding member of my Substack, which would also include a one-on-one 30-minute session with yours truly where you can ask me anything. Go to BEHOLDENTOTRUTH.com right now to become the man that you were meant to be, and the man that we desperately need you to be.
Because it's the same deceptive situation where you sit down, you watch Patrick Bet-David, and he's teaching people how to become wealthy and stay motivated, and he encourages people to pursue Christianity, and he talks about how much it changed his life and all this other stuff. But then when people go on his show and they press him on the Israel subject, he wavers on taking a side. Now, 2 years later, nearly 2 years later, after the genocide has already occurred, he's changing his tone. But when it was very clear to anybody who had any historical knowledge of Israel and the false flags, the dozens of them over the years, how they even became a nation in the first place, the prequels of World Wars II and I, the prequels of the previous 2,000 years, anybody who actually understands who the Jews are, how they operate, how the Mossad operates, the capture of all of our civil institutions, they knew on October 7th that that was an intentional, orchestrated, allowed event, that it was a good thing for Israel, and it would be used to further the greater Israel agenda, to pursue economic interests with the Ben Gurion Canal, to whip up a frenzy of, oh my gosh, anti-Semitism is out of control, from a religious perspective, to pursue the Third Temple. This stuff was just glaringly obvious to anybody who had studied Israel, studied the Jews, and knew what was going on. But because Patrick Bet-David has one of the largest podcasts on the internet, even if he I don't know if he's a Arab individual, he's some kind of brown guy, I don't know. I've heard him before talk about it, maybe Pakistani, I'm not sure. But even if he had some kind of gut instinct to say, yeah, I'm not really believing what's going on here with Israel, and I know what they've been doing in the Middle East for decades, he would not go there on his show. Just like anybody else who had 1 million, 2 million or more followers, even a couple 100,000, nobody would go there after October 7th who has influence, wealth, and status to lose. Nobody would go there. And I studied Patrick Bet-David's platform because I actually know an individual who went on his show before, a female, and the whole episode, the nature of the episode that she went on was about boss girls and traditional femininity. And can you balance the two? Can women go back to traditional biblical roles, but also can we get them to be entrepreneurs and somehow do both? And Patrick Bet-David's advice is, oh yes, of course. Because his whole show is about how to make as much money as possible for either gender. And so once again, this is somebody who presents themselves as, yeah, I'm a Trump supporter, I'm a conservative, I'm a Christian. But when you actually push on key issues, such as real patriarchal Christianity, such as who is our number one political opponent and religious opponent, and third, as a non-white individual, do you think that this guy is going to agree with you when you say America has to be a majority, preferably a super majority white country, and the only people leading the country should be white? That's obvious. Nobody should be leading China who is not Chinese. Nobody should be leading Pakistan who is not Pakistani. Right? Can we agree on this? That kind of just makes common sense. But you're not going to get that from any non-white conservative person. And I've talked about this before with people that I admire who are conservative that are black. Guys like Chad O. Jackson, who I personally am okay with. We resolved our beef. We talked one-on-one. I never gave you guys an update about that. But, we went back and forth pretty tense for about a month. And we actually finally got to break bread, sit down, talk for an hour and a half. And I explained in long format why white identity is not anti-Christian, and we came to an agreement. He understood my position. He understood that we're not asking for anything immoral, anything that contradicts the gospel. But still, whether it's Chad Jackson, what's the other guy, Jason Whitlock, Bryson Gray, who is now somehow considered somebody who should be in political discourse, any of these black conservative people, except like Jesse Lee Peterson and Charleston White, those are the only two black conservatives who are willing to point out the obvious, that America is a better country when it's run by white people. Cities are better when they are run by white people. States are better. Civilization is better when it is run by white people. People are safer. The economy is more stable. These things are proven to be true currently, historically. Just look outside. Look around the world. And I really admire those guys who are actually honest about it, and they're not so blinded by the propaganda of Martin Luther King and all of the egalitarian falsehoods that have been pushed on the entire nation, that all people are equally attributed, all people groups are equally attributed. It's just not true. They don't have the same biology. They haven't stood up the same cultures. They haven't achieved the same level of technological advancement, governmental advancement, educational advancement. Pick it. Just pick one. Scientific advancement. None of it. They're not the same. At a group level, it's just not happening. And so all non-white conservative people are not on our side. 99.99%. Now, be careful. Don't put words in my mouth when I say they're not on our side. I'm not saying they can't be useful and we can't form alliances. There has to be some kind of coalition of people for America first. In terms of installing and protecting the majority white representation, the white leadership, the Christian morality, those are our goals, obviously. But obviously there's also whites who are not Christian currently, but they do care about the white majority, and vice versa. There are Christians out there who may not agree with us about making sure there's a white majority. So it's a coalition effort of trying to find people who are beneficial for the cause. So take somebody like Kanye West. Exposing Jewish influence is a necessary step in securing our white majority. There's no way to do it without first exposing how the Jews have subverted the white majority in America, and they're doing the same all throughout Europe. So it's a necessary thing to find other people who may not be white, may not be Christian, but they're talking about Jewish influence. You got guys like Andrew Tate, who is a Muslim who is not purely white. He's like 50% white. And you have, as I said, Kanye West. You have Candace Owens. You have Chad Jackson. You have other people who are not white who can be helpful for our cause. And so it's not to just strike them off and say they're literally useless, but when you are trying to figure out, all right, who am I really going to listen to for perspectives on our mission, our exclusive mission that is very clearly defined. And so just to be clear, when I refer to the long-term mission, because this is often misinterpreted, usually uncharitably so, to put words in my mouth, when I say America must be majority white, it must be white leadership, white people need safe spaces that are segregated, that's not saying non-white people can't live in this continent. What I'm saying is, as I said, segregation is our path forward. White people have to have boundaries, borders protected with force militarily and legally, that this is an area for white people. And we can have other parts of the country that are multicultural. And if they want to subdivide within that, feel free. But our mission is securing places for white civilization and promoting the Christian faith, especially in that white civilization, which will honestly naturally occur. So whether or not it's Patrick Bet-David or all these other black conservatives or even Andrew Tate, it's very important that, just like this Peter Schiff guy, you have to do a little bit of critical thinking and say, if I were to ask this person who seems to be useful on a number of other topics, would you support segregation and making sure white people have the ability to live purely amongst themselves? Do you believe that white people should run America? At a minimum, a certain part of it that is exclusive for whites, but potentially the country? You're going to find that the answer to that question from virtually all non-white people, they're not going to agree with that. And that's why I say they are not on our side. They may be useful allegiances in terms of forming the coalition, but they are not aiming towards the same objective that we are. And that really needs to be understood. And in the case of Jews, it's always going to be a problem. Their ethnic nepotism, most frequently, not all, but most of them will have a dual loyalty to Israel that unfortunately entangles our government, it entangles our economy, it entangles our military, it entangles your tax dollars, because they care so much about a foreign nation that they know is the haven, it's the bunker for Jews worldwide, religious or non-religious. That's why it was created. It's the same thing Ben Shapiro says. The reason he cares so much about Israel is because if America goes to shit, he knows that's his insurance plan. If anti-Semitism gets out of control, not just Ben Shapiro, all the Jews are going to be getting on planes and going to Israel. And so that's why they need Israel to be protected, preferably even growing in its footprint to accommodate more Jews. That's why the Greater Israel Project exists. That's why Israel started out this small and is now this big and wants to be as large of a nation as they possibly can be, because they know the historical pattern of irrational anti-Semitism just coming up out of the middle of nowhere. And so they all got to get on a lifeboat and land back home. Key word, home. That's their home. They may live in this nation. They may have received a top-tier first world education that enabled them to become the wealthiest class in America in this nation. Your tax dollars went to protecting them in this nation. The same for their children, the same for their parents and grandparents. But when push comes to shove, this is not their home. They have somewhere else in mind where their heart truly is, that protects their religion as their highest priority and protects their people as their highest priority. And so when I have that same sense of home here, when all white people have that same sense of home in England, France, Germany, Spain, Sweden, pick one, when we say, no, this is our home, okay? It's our protected area for us. They say, no, it's not. Anybody can live here. This isn't a land for protecting white people and Christianity. Anybody who comes here and abides by the Constitution, it's their home too. Actually, no. Sorry, Tucker Carlson. Sorry, Glenn Beck. Sorry, Ben Shapiro. No. This is our home, meant to defend white people and our faith. It was not built to protect Freemasonry, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Islam. That's not why America was created. It wasn't a home for Asians and Indians and Africans and Hispanics. Absolutely not. It's in the doctrine itself of the founding fathers that this is a home for our people, the white men who built it. When they said our people, were they referring to Africans and Hispanics? Were they African or Hispanic? When they established who should be able to vote and own property in this country, were they saying, let's also make sure we include Hindus? No, it was actually exclusively a privilege. If you wanted to work in the colonial governments, almost all of them, you had to be Christian. You didn't know that? I thought separation of church and state. Yeah, before the 1776 Freemason coup of this nation, back when we were still individual colonies, it was in the colonial constitutions of most of the 13 colonies that in order to hold a public office, you had to be Christian. And not just in name, in pronouncement, but your community had to have seen you going to Sunday sermons. You had to be familiar with the scripture. And you had to be white. Those were the requirements. So, you guys get it? I think you get it. Let me check my notes here, because I feel like there was something else that I wanted to go over. I feel like there was something else. Oh yeah. I got some disappointing news. I know you guys like Breaking Bad. Back when I still watched TV and movies and stuff, I watched all the Breaking Bad seasons, and this is probably 5 or 10 years ago. And it's a good show, okay? The Jews make great television. They make great entertainment. This is what they do. They spin up fantasy worlds and fiction narratives that are very alluring, and they capture the mind, and they implant ideas very dangerously so. You could call it a gift, or you could call it satanic. Maybe you could call it a satanic gift. But one of the things about Breaking Bad that not everybody knows, this is that confusion of, oh, it's a good show. It's a based actor acting in a really based way. The main actor, Bryan Cranston, I was just browsing Facebook the other day, and somebody posted a quote of his that I'd like to share with you. He says, just ask yourself, from an African-American experience, when was it ever great in America? There's your totally based Breaking Bad. What is his name? I don't even remember. Whatever. Doesn't even matter what the main character's name was. And this is what you get with every Hollywood actor, with every mainstream musician. It's just deeply, deeply seated liberalism, deeply seated white guilt. Whether or not they're crypto Jews, guys like Seth Rogen and all of the others who have changed their name to make it appear that they're not actually Jewish. And then they go out there and bash white people. And then they subliminally mention or refer to how awful slavery and Jim Crow was, just like Mr. Bryan Cranston here. When was America ever great for African Americans? I don't know. Comparatively speaking, it seems pretty fucking amazing compared to their homeland. I would call it pretty great to live in America, especially in 2025 as an African American individual. You could go live in Ethiopia and compare the two, and, you know, maybe they should try that experiment. I would actually encourage them to do that. I would really love to see some African Americans who think that America is not a great place to live go and check out what African culture actually consists of. And so it's just maddening when you see white or seemingly white actors go out and do this apology tour for minorities. So illustrative of Hollywood and why you shouldn't be watching that stuff. Because even if it's a well-written story with compelling characters and story arcs, and maybe there's something to learn in the story there that you can apply to your life, you just gave money to this. You just supported this. You just elevated to worldwide fame people like this. Same is true every time you buy Taylor Swift, or I'm sure you guys aren't buying Taylor Swift, but I'm just talking about mainstream music, mainstream entertainment. When you engage with it, when you buy the streaming subscription to Netflix, Peacock, Hulu, owned by Disney, owned by Robert Iger. Robert Iger? His last name is Iger. Ron Iger? I can't remember. Either way, he's Jew. That's what you're supporting. You're allowing them to platform people like this, who they give a bunch of money, who they turn into celebrities, who they say, when you do an interview, you are not allowed to say anything ever critical of minorities. And ideally, they collect blackmail on these individuals so that they can't even squirm their way out of it. They can't even like get some wealth and then say, all right, thanks for the money, I'm out. That's not how it works. You don't get to just cash in your chips and walk away from Hollywood. Same is true with the government. They don't put you in the Congress, whether it's the Senate or the House or the White House. You're not put as a governor in a state, in a major city. You're not placed in there as a mayor without them holding leverage over you. Whether it's illicit blackmail or some other kind of way, they can just destroy your life at a whim's notice if you ever get off the leash. This is one of the reasons why people ask me, like, would you ever consider going into politics formally? Why don't you run for local office? I know how the sausage is made, unfortunately. I don't want my life destroyed. I don't want my family destroyed. And frankly, the so-called completely fake, constitutional, democratically elected republic that we live in, it's not real, okay? There's no voting our way out of this, especially due to the demographics of the country, the border situation, the H-1B situation, the ties of the intelligence agencies to Israel, the technology sector, Silicon Valley having infiltrated our entire life, all of the technology you use, the operating systems on your computers and your cell phones. We're all being surveilled. We're all on a list. Just yesterday, it came out that Trump is now encouraging and supporting Palantir, run by Alex Karp, hyper Jew, who sent his employees to Israel after October 7th to help out with their response, who runs mass surveillance to identify through facial recognition domestic terrorists, and who has said on live TV that his number one fear in life is white supremacy and white people with shovels coming, collecting him and killing him, who is also personally taking credit on live TV for, quote, destroying the far right in Europe. He's bragging about swatting down those angry white people who want to run their country. Donald Trump just gave him the keys to run a mass surveillance and data collection operation on the entire United States. Collect all your personal information, all your social media posts, everything you've ever said about minorities, Jews, gays, whatever. That's now in the hands of Alex Karp, who is deeply embedded with Peter Thiel, who helped to get J.D. Vance elected into the vice presidency so that J.D. Vance can then become the president in 2028 to keep this whole shit show going. So that was very discouraging to hear, but not surprising whatsoever. This is why I didn't vote. First, because I don't think the votes even matter. But second, to show you guys that who Trump presents himself as doesn't matter. When he talks about mass deportations, but doesn't actually achieve them, it doesn't matter. When he talks about draining the deep state, but doesn't do so, when he talks about releasing the Epstein files, but doesn't do so, politicians, as I put in my documentary, J.D. Vance, the Con Artist, I put together a great expose from Nick Fuentes, added B-roll, added music, did some editing, put it out there as a documentary. The first thing Nick says in that documentary is, how many times am I going to have to tell you guys that when politicians say things, that's not demonstrative of what they are going to do? Did you know that politicians can say things to get you to agree with them, to get you comfortable with them, with no intention whatsoever of doing those things? Whether because they know the bureaucratic deep state, whatever you want to call it, will not allow it to happen, or because they don't even want it to happen. It doesn't matter. They get in knowing that it's not going to happen, but they need you comfortable with them getting in. And if you believe that democracy is real, then theoretically they need your vote to do so. And so they go out there and say, we're going to drain the swamp and we're going to share the Epstein files and JFK, and we're going to go after the vaccine manufacturers, and we're going to do all of this other stuff. And you're meant to say, this is my guy. I got to support him. I got to tell my friends to support him. And then when things are going wrong once they're in office, you're supposed to say, he just hasn't had enough time. Oh, it's the bureaucracy fighting back. It's not his fault. He came into a hostile environment. It's not his fault. Who chose the cabinet? He's the one that puts Nikki Haley into her position. He's the one who puts Kash Patel into his position. He's the one who puts Dan Bongino into his position, running the FBI. Nikki Holm, I think is her name, Christy Holm. He's the one who picks all these people. And then you have Dan Bongino and Kash Patel doing a complete 180, where previously they were talking about how important it was to get the Epstein files out. There was clearly corruption. Now they go out there and say, oh, he definitely killed himself. Nothing to see here. And that's after slow walking and ultimately never releasing the Epstein files. Never actually getting close to the subject of, yeah, he was obviously a Mossad and CIA agent who has material on our entire government, all of our leaders of industry, deeply in bed with the tech industry. Donald Trump, your boy, picked all those guys. Donald Trump picked Nikki Haley, who during the presidential debate said, Israel doesn't need America, America needs Israel. That's somebody we absolutely need in the White House. So Bryan Cranston over here, your Hollywood celebrities who want you to think that somehow living in America as a minority is not great, fuck these people, okay? Fuck them. Why are blacks and Hispanics and Indians and Asians flooding into our country? Because it's not great here? Because we treat minorities so poorly here? That's why they are desperate to leave their homelands and come here? Because it's not great here? Give me a fucking break, okay? Use some common sense. Use some comparative perspective. Unbelievable. And so the theme of this vlog was, obviously, who can you trust, who can you not? You got to do the background checks, Wikipedia, YouTube, search their Twitter history. And if they're a celebrity, you just can't trust them, period. That's just the way it is. So I think that's going to wrap it up for today's session, you guys. I'm going to get in there, get this arm day in. I got some groceries to pick up on the way home. Beautiful weather today. I got the sunroof open. It's like 75. I wish it would actually just get hot already so I could enjoy the pool, but it's still just not quite there. Very frustrating. Like, this spring season here in Alabama is delayed to launch. It's just like not showing up. I've been waiting for over a month. Like, at any point now, it's May, soon to be June 1st, and it still hit 85 degrees once. Like, where is summer? I know it's coming, obviously. It always does. But I'm just impatient. I'm a summer guy. I want my summer already. I want to grill out. I want to be in the pool. I want to lay out and get some sun. Anyway, I hope you guys are enjoying the season wherever you are. Maybe it's like cripplingly hot already where you are and you're already complaining about summer. I'll be doing that. I'll be doing that in 2 or 3 months. We're like, God, it's so hot out here. But, listen, the early part of summer where it isn't super duper hot, 105 degrees plus humidity, that's where I thrive. And even when it gets super duper hot here in Alabama, fortunately, I have the amenities to kind of temper that situation. I got the covered porch. You got a couple fans on. You got a cold beverage. You got the pool to dip into. Worst case scenario, just go back inside. Turn on the air conditioning. It's not that big of a deal. But when it's not even an option to enjoy the warmth in the pool and the outside vibe and all that, you just feel like you're being deprived. That's how I feel. I'm being deprived. It's unjust what is happening to me. The fact that I am not enjoying summer right now. That's how I feel. So anyway, thanks for watching this vlog, you guys. We're super productive lately, man. We've been dropping like 4 or 5 episodes a week. Substack is growing and I'm loving it. I am loving it. I've seen a lot of love over there. People coming in from Instagram, people coming in from YouTube, picking up some subscribers. I've said before, Substack is the future for this platform.
The number one question you guys are asking me is, how can I wake people up? And you also ask, how can I help support you? And so I have a solution for both of those questions. You can head over to my Substack. You'll be able to get exclusive early access to all of my documentaries, my long format content, free ebooks, and even a chance to talk to me one-on-one. You can do Ask Me Anythings. There's several different membership options for your budget, whatever fits your lifestyle. Head on over and get yourself a subscription now.
Because they're going to nuke, whether it's the YouTube or the Instagram, at some point, especially if we go to war with Iran, which seems inevitable, especially if Palantir becomes the information harvester and censorship primary operator. You got Jonathan Greenblatt from the ADL out there just in the last few days saying how anti-Semitism is at a 400% high and we have to shut everything down. The First Amendment is being misinterpreted so that everybody thinks that they have free speech. I posted about it on Instagram. And so there's going to be a crackdown. We talked last week about the ban wave where they got rid of all of Nick's clipping accounts, people that were clipping Nick's content. Huge ban wave. They were even banning people from other nations, not for sharing Nick's content, but the AFD and a couple of other white nationalists from other nations got banned on Instagram. So there is potentially a very suppressive ban wave coming, and my account, having become a particularly large account in that space, I really am anxious that they're just going to destroy it. And when they do that, there's not like oh, you just wait 30 days and then you get back to normal. The account's just gone. All 2,500 posts are gone. All of you guys lose connection with me. It's just gone. It's like a nuke on our operation. And so de-risking against that, obviously we want the YouTube support because that's the headquarters for this long format conversation. You have the simultaneous growth of Rumble, which theoretically should be more protected from censorship because the same people who nuke Instagram are going to want to nuke YouTube because they're both owned by Jews. And so that's why we're building the Rumble, which doesn't have the same engagement, unfortunately. We're like slowly creeping our way to 1,000 followers on Rumble. YouTube, I think we're around 1,300. Instagram, we're at nearly 42,000. Substack, we're at like 40, okay? So that's why I say we have to be migrating over to Substack. That's where we have to be. You get the long format content as well. A lot of people think when I talk about Substack, they're thinking essays and long format written content. No. Substack is now a long format video platform. I'm dropping every vlog that I drop on YouTube also on Substack. So that's why you guys need to be there. But also there are additional mechanisms in Substack where we can offer subscriptions and exclusive content that is within that safe environment to not be censored. So that's why I need you guys to support the Substack. Anyway, thanks for hanging out again. I appreciate you guys. I love you. Until next time, Christ is King.
Beholden to Truth. Christ culture. White identity. And fitness lifestyle. Red pilling the masses. On the front lines. Against the synagogue of Satan.